Hey, people, well, this is what we brought to you earlier. The story about where the man was standing out in Colorado where he came home and said his family was dead. Say he was rushing home and running red lights and all of that because he called his wife and she didn't answer the phone. So if you notice in that video earlier that this man was not even crying and he was commenting on a t-shirt and he was hugging himself. And he was giving them scenarios how that they could have left because they didn't leave on camera. They could have went through the back door. This fool is crazy. Because if I come home and my queen at home, it's gonna be some trouble. And this dude said that he called her friends and the friends that he didn't even know nothing about. How? You don't know nothing about them. But check this lady out, Hebrews, and leave a comment at the bottom and join us on Patreon. Hey, $1 or $2, man, a month. That ain't gonna hurt. 50 cents. We happy with 50 cents. But join us and help us so we can build our news station up. Hebrew News. Like NBC and ABC. They started out with nothing. But today, they major news. One day we're going to become major news and we're going to have our own stuff. That's the way we do it. There's creative brothers out there every day that's doing something that's in the truth and know who they are. So come on and join us, people, on this campaign. Help us move on. We are on Patreon. Hebrew News. Check this out. Subscribe. Tell your friends where you heard it at. Later. Oh, we made a mistake again. Oh yeah, we make mistakes. Cause we only human. Let's get it on there.
An O'Toole.
Thank
this
you.
Has so many people disturbed just because of the way Watts carried himself out.
Don't forget us.
Prior to his arrest, he gave a series of interviews where he pushed the narrative of his family went missing. I want to actually play for you some of what he said.
This house is not the same. I mean, last night was traumatic. Last night was, I can't really stay in this house again, like, with nobody here. And last night, I wanted that knock on the door.
Oh yeah, I wanted to say this. Don't think I'm cutting half of head off, because I ain't. That's the way it's shown.
Barrel rush me and just give me a hug and knock me on the ground. But that didn't happen.
Well, he mentioned that he wants to see his kids, give him that hug. He didn't mention his wife. Was that a telling sign for you?
Well, I mean, if that were the whole interview, but we're only taking a look at a snippet, so it might or might not be significant, but in the totality of it, I think what's more impressive to me or significant to me is that he talks about himself in that snippet. There really is very little about, as you say, the wife and the children, but there is a noticeable absence of emotional behavior or words of emotion, like I'm so scared, I'm so worried about them. He talks about the house being empty, but that's not the same as expressions of empathy for his family. There's just an absence of that.
You know, Watts went on to use the word nightmare to describe his ordeal, essentially saying that he was clueless as to exactly what could have happened. I want to play that for you. You know, throughout this interview, he talks a lot about the impact, as you mentioned, that it's had on him.
Wherever they're at, like, I have no inclination to where they're at right now. Like, I've exhausted, like, every friend that I know of, and every friend that I have has called friends that Shanann has that maybe I didn't know about, and it's just like, it's like, it's vanished. Like, she's not, like, when I got home yesterday, it was like a ghost town. Like, she wasn't here. Kids weren't here. I have no idea, like, where they went. And it's just earth-shattering. I don't feel like this is even real right now. It's like a nightmare that I just can't wake up from.
A nightmare I just can't wake up from. What do you make of what you're hearing?
A couple of things. He says, I know nothing. I have no idea where they are. So he's pushing the investigation away from him. If I don't know anything, obviously I can't have anything to do with it. And yet at the same time, throughout that interview, he talks about, I hope they're safe, but if they're not safe, I hope he comes home. But what he's doing at that point is he's calling it a nightmare without even knowing what happened. So it might not even, maybe they did go away and not tell him, but they still could come home. But he's already phrased it as a nightmare. So that really is in direct conflict of, well, I don't know what happened. And then he jumps to the nightmare scenario. So he conflicts himself. But I do think it's important important that people understand when somebody kills their own family and then they go on TV to say, but I didn't have anything to do with that, that ability to be so very sure of your own interpersonal skills that you can attempt to fool a national and international audience is very unusual. I mean, that's a lot of arrogance and confidence that you can pull this off, and that's not typical. So it really goes to his sense of arrogance and his ability, he thinks anyway, to be persuasive. Unfortunately, he was not.
Is there anything, Mary, that you can read from his body language?
Well, if you can see his whole body language, like looking at him right there, that's what we call a very defensive posture. That's when you see people that are protecting themselves. He's not open with his words seem to imply that, hey, I don't know anything, but his body is that he's hugging himself in a very defensive posture. You never look at just one element of their behavior or one thing that they say. You have to look at the totality. So his words seem inappropriate, his emotional state seems inappropriate, and then you've got a defensive body posture. But that in and of itself would not certainly be enough to certainly to call into question in and of itself his guilt, because we'd have to have a baseline of knowledge of how this person acts and sounds like in everyday life. So we're going from a TV interview. But when you combine that behavior with very likely the forensic evidence that they found at the house and then the forensic evidence they found at the crime scene, all of that together is what they will present in court. By itself, you can just make observations of him as a person. It's the forensic evidence that will be very telling in this case.
You've been in this field for a very long time. Is it surprising to you that a man with no criminal record, with what appears to be a great family situation, would do something like this? I mean, does it indicate were there financial problems? Was there a love interest?
When you have a case like this, it's never one motive. It's never just financial problems. It's a combination of motives. So in this case, it could be the money issues. It could be a possible affair. The mom was pregnant, and pregnancies can be very stressful in some families. So it's a combination of things. It also could be, hey, this is not what the kind of life that I wanted. What is significant, though, is that all of these issues, all of them even combined, could have been addressed in a very pro-social way. In other words, borrow money from families, get a divorce. It could have been handled in ways that did not result in murder. The fact that this individual chose murder to address these issues will be something prosecutors will very likely bring up in court to demonstrate that his thinking style is a very selfish thinking style. It's a style that he demonstrated prior to what he did to his family. So prosecutors want to show that this was not a result of him snapping.
Yeah, just incredible.
That this thinking behavior that he has demonstrated before. He could have addressed all of these issues. There's nothing these little girls did, nothing the mother did that ever could have been deserving of this. So it could have been handled in a very pro-social way. It's a very extremely criminally selfish way to address your problems. That behavior pre-existed, in my opinion, likely pre-existed this crime.
Mary Ellen O'Toole, thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome.